The Arctic is undergoing a dramatic transformation that's reshaping global shipping and igniting a new race for influence among the world's major powers. Climate change is warming the region at approximately 4 times the global average, causing sea ice to fracture and melt at unprecedented rates. This environmental shift is opening maritime passages that were previously impassable for most of the year, creating what some analysts call a potential game-changer for international trade and geopolitics. 2 primary routes are emerging from the melting ice. The Northern Sea route runs along Russia's Arctic coast from the Bering Strait to the Barents Sea, currently navigable for 4 to 5 months annually during summer and fall. The Northwest Passage threads through Canadian waters and Alaskan territory, accessible for about 2 to 3 months each year. These corridors offer dramatically shorter transit times between Asia and Europe compared to traditional routes through the Suez Canal or around Africa, with distance reductions of up to 35% and time savings of up to 10 days. For China, the Arctic represents far more than a simple shipping shortcut. Beijing has branded its Arctic ambitions the Polar Silk Road, positioning it as a northern extension of its Belt and Road Initiative. The strategic value is immense. Using Arctic routes allows Chinese vessels to avoid vulnerable choke points that fall under Western influence, including the Malacca Strait, the Suez Canal, and the South China Sea. In recent years, China has significantly expanded its Arctic container shipping operations. In 2025 alone, Chinese operators completed 14 container voyages via the Northern Sea route, up from 11 in 2024 and just 7 in 2023. One particularly notable voyage saw the container ship Istanbul Bridge complete the first direct China to United Kingdom container connection via the Arctic in just 20 days, maintaining an average speed that demonstrated the route's viability under favorable conditions. Chinese shipping companies Nunu Shipping Line and Sea Legend have emerged as pioneers on this route, filling a vacuum left by Western carriers who have largely stepped back due to environmental concerns, insurance challenges, and the geopolitical complications of working closely with Russia. These Chinese operators have already announced plans to further expand their Arctic offerings in 2026, adding more sailings and improving schedule reliability. The broader significance extends beyond shipping efficiency. The Arctic region is estimated to hold 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and 30% of its natural gas, making it a treasure trove of natural resources that will become increasingly accessible as ice continues to recede. Russia views the Arctic as both a matter of national identity and strategic necessity. The Northern Sea route passes entirely through Russian-claimed waters, and Moscow has invested heavily in Arctic infrastructure, including ports, military facilities, and the world's most powerful icebreaker fleet. Russia operates approximately 40 icebreakers, including 8 nuclear-powered heavy icebreakers capable of year-round operations in the harshest conditions. This gives Russia unmatched capability to control and profit from Arctic shipping. The Russian government requires all vessels transiting the Northern Sea route to obtain Russian permits, employ Russian pilots, and pay substantial fees, creating a lucrative revenue stream and maintaining Moscow's leverage over the route. However, Russia lacks the financial resources to fully develop the Arctic alone, particularly under Western sanctions. This has driven an increasingly close partnership with China, despite underlying tensions. The relationship is asymmetric, with China as the dominant economic partner providing investment and using the route, while Russia provides access and infrastructure. Some analysts note that Chinese enthusiasm for Arctic cooperation appears episodic rather than strategic, and Beijing has even stopped using the term near-Arctic state, suggesting the partnership may be more transactional than transformational. The United States is playing catch-up in the Arctic, a reality that has prompted significant recent action under the Trump administration. For decades, American Arctic capabilities atrophied while Russian and Chinese presence grew. The U.S. currently operates only 2 aging polar icebreakers, the heavy icebreaker Polar Star and the medium icebreaker Healy, both frequently in maintenance. In 2024, the Coast Guard acquired a 3rd vessel, the commercially built Stories, marking the first polar icebreaker acquisition in 25 years. But even with this addition, the disparity remains stark when compared to the combined 45 icebreakers operated by Russia and China. Recognizing this capability gap as a national security vulnerability, the Trump administration has made Arctic infrastructure a priority. In October 2025, President Trump signed a historic agreement with Finland for Finnish shipyards to construct 4 medium Arctic security cutters for the U.S. Coast Guard, with delivery of the first vessels expected in 2028. This partnership, formalized through the icebreaker collaboration effort pact between the United States, Canada, and Finland, aims to leverage Finnish expertise in Arctic shipbuilding while simultaneously rebuilding American shipyard capacity for domestic production. The broader procurement plan includes funding for 11 icebreakers total, with an estimated cost of $6.1 billion, including 3 heavy icebreakers and several medium and light vessels. Beyond ships, the United States is expanding its Arctic military presence through increased patrols, exercises with NATO allies, and infrastructure investments at key bases in Alaska and Greenland. The NOAA is deploying new survey vessels to map the rapidly changing Arctic seabed, ensuring safe navigation for future commercial traffic. The Coast Guard and Department of Defense are also investing in persistent domain awareness through unmanned systems, sensors, and satellite surveillance to monitor the increasingly active region. The geopolitical stakes extend well beyond shipping economics. Control of Arctic routes could reshape global trade patterns, reduce dependence on traditional choke points, and shift strategic leverage among nations. For NATO, Finland's 2023 accession brought critical Arctic expertise and a direct border with Russia into the alliance, strengthening the Western position in the high north. Russia views growing NATO activity in the Arctic with suspicion, with President Putin warning in March 2025 that the United States and NATO countries were treating the far north as a springboard for possible conflicts. China's growing Arctic footprint represents perhaps the most significant long-term shift. Through scientific research stations, resource investments, and expanding shipping operations, Beijing is establishing itself as a major Arctic stakeholder despite being located thousands of miles south of the Arctic Circle. Chinese military vessels have begun conducting joint patrols with Russian forces in Arctic waters, and Chinese research icebreakers regularly operate in the region. This creeping expansion concerns Western strategists who worry about the military and intelligence implications of Chinese permanent presence in an area critical to North American security. Yet significant challenges remain for Arctic shipping. Despite the hype, the routes are still seasonal, weather-dependent, and fraught with danger. Ice conditions during the 2025 season were actually unfavorable, with the open water window lasting barely 2 weeks in some sections. Melting ice paradoxically creates new hazards, as fractured ice floes drift unpredictably and can damage or trap vessels. The region offers virtually no rescue infrastructure, limited search and rescue capabilities, and an environment where any accident can quickly become catastrophic. Environmental groups warn that increased shipping traffic threatens pristine Arctic ecosystems and indigenous communities, with oil spill response capabilities essentially non-existent in these remote waters. The economic calculus also remains uncertain. While distance savings are real, Arctic routes require ice-strengthened vessels that cost more to build and operate, icebreaker escort fees can be substantial, insurance premiums are higher, and the seasonal nature limits year-round scheduling reliability. Most major Western shipping lines have concluded that the Arctic remains a niche route rather than a mainstream alternative to established corridors. In 2025, the Northern Sea route carried approximately 3.2 million tons of cargo across 103 transit voyages. This sounds significant until compared to the roughly 12 billion tons moving annually through traditional routes like Suez. Even optimistic projections suggest Arctic routes might capture only 2 to 5% of global shipping by mid-century. Nevertheless, the trajectory is clear. As climate change continues warming the Arctic faster than anywhere else on Earth, ice coverage will continue decreasing and the navigation window will continue expanding. What seems marginal today could become strategically critical tomorrow. The nations positioning themselves now, building infrastructure, establishing presence, and developing expertise, will hold the advantage when and if Arctic routes become truly viable commercial corridors. This is why the United States, Russia, and China are racing north, each pursuing their strategic interests in a region that's being fundamentally reshaped by forces beyond any single nation's control. The question is no longer whether the Arctic will change, but rather which countries will shape its future and benefit from the opportunities emerging from the ice.